Well, we're very excited to have Adidas here today. I mentioned it in my opener, but wearable technology is basically the forefront of the new data that we're working with in sport. We use it in all our practices. We can't use it on the floor yet, although I think with Commissioner Silver that's coming. There's at our elite levels, there's technology to get real-time acceleration, velocity, position data about our athletes. We can tell when they're fatiguing. We can tell when we can push them harder in practice, when we can push them less. Obviously, wearable tech has come all the way down to the consumer level. I myself have a device that tracking my steps, and I'm never quite getting to the number of steps I should be getting to, unfortunately. But miCoach is, the leader in the field, and I'm very excited to introduce them. I have some business. If you want to send a question to them, you have to text to 22333, and you start it with WearTech, WEARTECH. Or you can tweet also to WearTech and with a pound SSAC, and then the questions will get to the folks at Adidas. And thanks for taking the time to listen.
Yep. Thank you, Daryl. And good afternoon, everybody. While you enjoy your lunch, we would like to talk to you about wearable tech. And as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, as Daryl mentioned, you can text it to 22333 WearTech, or you can also tweet it to WearTech. So we look forward to having an engaging conversation this afternoon with you. So my name is Kezar Hassanji with Adidas, and I want to talk to you about what Adidas is doing in the field of wearable tech. As wearable tech is exploding, we want to talk to you more about our angle in wearable tech and where we're going with that. And followed with what, once I talk through about my part, I also want to introduce to you our sort of guest speaker today, Max Reckers, who's going to talk to you about how do you use wearable tech in the field of sports and how do you use that for training as a tool. So going back to our roots and our heritage for Adidas, that's Adi Dassler, founder of Adidas, and innovation in sports has been sort of the founding principles of the company, and then we continue to do that all throughout. And it is not just for one sport or one athlete, it's been across the sports, and we are committed to make sure that we bring the best technology to make the athlete better. And as you guys have already known, wearable tech is exploding. This chart that I have up there is about 6 or 8 months old. It was crowded then, it is more crowded now. So there are more and more wearable tech devices in our daily life, and you probably are experiencing and using some of those. The key there for us is, from Adidas perspective, is like we bring our heritage and our domain expertise in sports to wearable tech. And that is how we view wearable tech growing in the future. Part of what we bring at wearable tech is to make each and every athlete better. As we all know, each athlete is very unique in their perspective, very unique in their training, very unique in how and what they want to do, and their skill base. And this is the value that we bring in terms of wearable tech with a sports context to make each and every athlete better the way they are, as unique they are. And we also look at wearable tech and this space for bringing the right technology for elite as well as for consumers. So all the way from teams in schools to elite teams all the way to the top. And our wearable tech is brought under our miCoach brand. So miCoach has been in existing for a good bit number of years. We've had several consumer offerings in that, as well as elite offering that I'm going to talk to you about. These are some of the consumer offerings that we've recently brought under miCoach. The first one is a smart run watch, and it is designed very specifically for runners, where it has GPS and it has optical heart rate, and it can do both tracking what you are doing as well as tracking your body as well. And I also need to mention that we have all of these devices in the tech room on display, and for you to able to come and experience that. So when you have a moment, an opportunity, please stop by the tech room where we have a booth. We've got all of these consumer as well as elite devices on display. So the next one is the speed cell, essentially more that goes on the shoe, and then it gives you speed and distance. The one after that is Excel. That is a device that that gives heart rate as well as movements, accelerations, decelerations, jump. And the next one is, so we also have these sensor apparel. So we've been able to take our heart rate monitoring sensors and embed it into apparel. And so the unique part of that is, like, we've not sort of designed technology just for technology's sake. We've looked at the best apparel that people are wearing, athletes as well as sports people, and then embedded heart rate sensors in that, so it becomes very comfortable and easy to use. And then we also have mobile apps that uses either the functionality of smartphone or connects with any of these other devices that gives you that unique user interface. So these are a whole different wearable tech devices that we have under the miCoach brand, and using our sports domain expertise, bringing the value that each one of you would like to have from a wearable tech. And the next part is, like, I also want to talk more about the rest of the time about the professional or elite devices. So we have got the miCoach Elite Team System that we introduced last year. These are the different components of it. It's got a smart shirt which has technology built into it. With Player Cell, it has real-time information that's sent to an iPad. The key part of there is, like, we've got very simple and easy to use smart shirt and the Player Cell that collects all of that information of what you're doing as well as information about you, and then transmits it real time. And then we have this unique analytics that we are building on, so that we can crunch all the data into analytics that are very relevant and very useful information. And we'll talk a little bit more about the analytics as we go along. So I would like to start with this video which shows the system, and then we'll talk more.
Adidas, the game changers of football, introduces the miCoach Elite System, an innovation that is changing the face of football. Developed in partnership with the world's top players and coaches, tablets are linked up to special wireless cells worn by each player. These give the coaches a bird's eye view of the entire team. Players wear cutting-edge tech-fit tops with the tracker integrated in the neck of the top for comfort and design. The very best are using it to really get under the skin of player performance. An innovation that is changing the face of football. Who are the top performers? Who need to rest? Who could push it harder? The miCoach Elite Team System puts the answers to these questions and more at the coach's fingertips. With real-time stats beamed direct from each player, they can track data like heart rate, speed, acceleration, and power. Tracking real-time performance insights, helping teams train smarter, play faster, and dominate the game. Imagine being able to use real-time data to decide when to make a substitution, or looking over at the bench and studying the heart rate of the players to gauge who could change the game. Performance data is transferred wirelessly, displaying match-critical information. Coaches can also create drills based on player data to hone match tactics or plan for the opposition. In the future, the likes of Joachim Löw could be using the Team Elite system in real matches, not just training. The miCoach Elite Player Cell and TechFit Elite collect and transmit data to the miCoach Elite base, uploaded to the website for post-session analysis and reporting. Adidas makes training smarter.
So that video gives you an idea about what the Elite Team System looks like and how it's being used by the teams. We have the system also in the demo, as I mentioned, so you can stop by and see the system. The heart of the system is this smart shirt, which has the sensors built into it, and at the back of it is the Player Cell that goes in here. And we made sure that that is very simple and easy to use by all the athletes. And the technology was built around the shirts that the athletes already wear. So they are not wearing or experiencing anything different that comes in their way. So it's like very unobtrusive technology. And then using this technology with the shirt and the sensors, We measure all of these different parameters, including heart rate, including all different types of movements and motion. And then the key is to look at the key metrics that we develop out of that. So for us, if you look at this, the insight part is what the player or the athlete is doing. Like they're running around, they have acceleration, deceleration, speed. So you get all of that information in terms of the amount of work that the athlete is putting on the field. The outer circle is what is happening to the athlete as a result of that activity. So part one is the activity and the work that is done, and the outer circle is the body's response to that. And we believe that is very important to measure both, not just what the athlete is doing, but what's happening to the athlete. And then we have the ability to correlate that information, right, and be able to give what is the power, what is the relative power, what is the efficiency, what is the training impact. And later on, Max is going to go in more into details about some of these metrics. So I'll give you one quick short example, right? Heart rate has been used in sports for a long period of time. So if you look at the heart rate of these three athletes, right, A, B, and C, clearly athlete B has done the most amount of work. His heart rate is the highest, he has the highest heart rate load. But if you look at the full picture in terms of amount of power output that the athlete has done in the field, you get a slightly different story, right? So you look at athlete A who's been able to put the maximum amount of effort or power out on the field, but he has a slightly lower workload, so he's in better shape. So you can use this kind of information together to make better decisions and be able to train the athlete better. Not to overtrain or to undertrain, but to optimize the training. Another example is, so our system generates tremendous amount of data. So what you see in the background is the data generated from our system in fractions of seconds. When we were building this system and we were going and talking out to all the elite trainers and coaches and athletes, the last thing they wanted was more data. So our key opportunity was to convert all of that data into very relevant, meaningful, useful information for the coaches and the trainers to use. And that is what we're going to focus on in terms of the rest of the presentation today. Okay. I also wanted to point out that the team of experts within Adidas and with externals that we built, a lot of them are out here. Roger is also here, and so is Meg and Bryce from Adidas, and we've been sort of using also the expertise from an extended team. Darcy from Athletes Performance, which is now Team Exos. Max, who's going to talk a little bit more, and Steve McGregor, who's the sports scientist that we've been working with. And all of these experts are here today. Take the opportunity to ask them the difficult questions, not me. And then also stop over to the tech room and see this technology in action. Now, what we want to do for the rest of the presentation is show how this tool can be used across sports for any different training methodology. Different coaches, different trainers have their own training methodology. But what's common across all of these are these key 4 variables, and it may be called differently, but it's around the mode, the frequency, the intensity, and the volume of training, right? And the neat thing about this tool is this tool can be used across sports and across different training methodology. And for the rest of the presentation this afternoon, I want to turn it over to Max Reckers, who's going to talk about a case study in terms of how we can use this tool with a particular training methodology and what is the kind of information we get out of that. Brief introduction to Max. Max himself is a hockey player, but he has worked with a lot of elite teams in the past, starting with AZ, then with Bayern Munich, and with Ajax. And he actually has one of the most extensive experience with this miCoach elite system since the time we started developing to now that it's commercial and is being used by a lot of teams. Max, thank you.
Yeah. Is the mic on? Okay. Hello there. I'm going to try to tell you guys something more in depth in how to use technology like this and use it on an actual day-to-day rhythm with a professional team. So as Kesa already mentioned, my job is to translate day-to-day information which comes available around the soccer team and make it to useful information for the coach. Now think of this position as a coach. You have 30 players on a pitch running around, but on that Saturday and Sunday, on match day, you only can select 11. So every day you have to judge and make decisions on which player you are going to select for your first team. Luckily, that coach is not alone. He has a big staff with people helping him decide. The role of the performance analyst, which is my role, is to gather all this data, make sure it's valid, translate it into usable parts, and then go on. As a context, there's a lot of data out there. And there are a lot of systems which can measure almost anything. But the key is what it says over there. First is, if you have data, chances are enormous that you will pick out the worst examples. But you have to remember that you work with humans, not with robots. With robots, it's simple. If the device doesn't work, we will replace it with another one. But a human being can have a bad mood. He can be sick. There can be all kinds of things. If you are using this tool as a stick and you hit him every time when he does something not right, then you will lose him in minutes. And you will create an atmosphere which is really about fear. And if you're in that area, players don't want to cooperate. They don't want to wear your stuff. So that's something which you really should avoid. Second is, there's a lot of science going around in soccer at the moment. The problem is that it's going further away from the language of the coach. And what I always try to emphasize is try to match those two. Try to adapt to the language of the coach and therefore the language of the team, and that will help you in progressing to move along with the team, make your learnings, make your decisions, and move forward. Third one is create day-to-day routines with your team. It's really important that, for example, we have this, every system has normally a heart rate strap, and players always hate it. But they will hate it especially if they have to wear it on Monday, on Wednesday and Friday, and they don't know exactly when they do and when they don't have to wear it. So what we always try is bring in a routine, they wear it every day, they wear the devices, they come and collect a pod, it's recording, and from there we go into the training session. And the last way is, don't treat the numbers as the truth, but use it as a way to communicate through players. And use it as examples to get feedback from them, what's actually happening to them. If the numbers are only the decision makers, I think we're losing a lot of value in the process and decisioning in coach. What I tried to do today is I took the periodization example, which is pretty famous in soccer, from a guy called Raymond Verheijen, a notorious guy, difficult guy to work with. If you have a chance, don't look at his Twitter account, because he's badgering every elite coach he can find to tell him that they are not training right and that they should use his training methods. The good thing about him is I don't care about if his model fits or doesn't fit. I just wanted to take the opportunity for you guys to overlay the basics of his model to the Team Elite system that we have, to show you guys how you can make such a model operational. And please use it in any context that it will fit to your teams or the people you work with. The goal of his model is really simple. Help soccer players to improve their performance. Okay, but that's a kind of really general thing. So we want to quantify performance. Performance means being better in attack, better in defense, and better in transition, and then important, in less space and time. So the higher the level gets in soccer, the closer the spaces are, and the more actions that are required. So if we move into the next step, what's then better? So better means more actions. Instead of 2, in the same time frame and even probably less space, be able to make 3 actions. And maintain that for 90 minutes. If you play against the Germans, 93 minutes. Make more explosive actions. So if I'm stronger and can accelerate faster than my opponent, then I'm in the advantage. So we want to train players to be more explosive. And, very important, be able to maintain that for those 93 minutes. So, the difficulty of measuring in soccer is that the type of movement is really variable. So that means if you want to track a 300-meter runner, you know one thing. He's going to run in a straight line, and he's going to run as fast as he can. Problem in soccer is that he doesn't only run forwards, he runs backwards. Sometimes there's a lot of space, so he needs to go and reach a high speed, but sometimes he needs to accelerate a lot, only in a small space. All of those factors give a certain load on the body. And what we need to have is a metric which can cope with that, which can display that load independent if it's a long sprint or a short acceleration. And we think we found that one. We call it mechanical power, which is nothing new for every scientific guy. The only thing we did is we brought it into a system and we did it in real time. So power we're going to define as speed multiplied by acceleration in 3D. We did a couple of pretty amazing things. First is, on that accelerometer, we are the only system which is able to remove the gravity up to 1 degree accurate. So that means, independent of how you rotate our pod, there's no gravity force displayed in there. That means that we have the clean acceleration, which we can use to calculate power. Then we fuse that with the speed that we get from the GPS, and we have one metric which can be used to identify the load on what you see in the left picture, a really long sprint. So the speed is getting high, but the acceleration will get lower. I always try to explain this story by you're in a really crappy car with a 1.8 liter engine and you're behind a truck. You're driving 80 miles and you have to pass that truck. You step the gas, but nothing happens. It takes a while and then slowly, gradually it will pick up a little bit of extra speed. But now remember that same action with a fat 4.2 Audi big car and you're driving behind that. If you step the gas, it will even then accelerate. So the difference, that is what we're talking about. That is power as a unit, as a metric. The problem with that is now we have the metric, but we want to align it to the capability of the player. So some athletes will be really fast and can go to 33 kilometers an hour. Another athlete might be much stronger, but can only go to 28 kilometers per hour. You want to align those to the capabilities of the specified athlete. That's why we display power as a relative unit. So we say 100% is his normal work rate, is a work rate that he can maintain for a longer time. Everything above is what we call exertion. It will cause him an extra effort. Then we have a fantastic web system. So you saw in the previous video, which was run by Kesa, player has the device. On the iPad, we can see all kinds of real-time data. But after the session, we want to go in deep and we want to analyze. I just explained the primary metric we chose is power. And what we're going to see is now a graph of, this is an actual drill, 5 against 5. So 5 players against 5 other players in about 60 square meter area. One unique feature of the system is that we can divide an exercise into extra intervals. So you can see there was one drill here, the warm-up, there was one positional game, and then we played the 5v5. We like the 5v5 a lot because it's really soccer specific. They get a lot of ball contacts, and we can apply some conditional models into it. So what we did is we used the system to divide the rest phases and define the active phases. Now back to the model, but remember the last slide. We wanted to quantify more actions. So we have this power metric, which can pretty accurately measure. And then we, sorry, one back. Other way, yeah. What we want to do is classify the number of actions. So we want to know every time he goes above that exertion level, above that 100% level for a specified time, we want to count those instances. And we call them high intensity events. So here you see an example, 3 different sprints. So athlete is walking, standing still, and sprinting. Every time he goes above that yellow zone, we will count it, longer than 0.4 seconds, we will count it as one event. The system will automatically do that. And if you move forward, we played 4 times, that 5v5, the same amount of time. And what you will see with this athlete is about 13 to 14 high intensity events. And then third and fourth part, he really dropped. In this specific case, this was an athlete that came back after an injury. And we were in rehab, working with the athlete, getting him better. We thought he was really fit. Joined the team, coach says, doing really well. But he was not in the first 5. If we wouldn't have had the system, we would never have seen that he dropped back that far. Because one of the first things you will notice with a fatiguing athlete is that the number of high intensity events and the peak values, those will go down. Second one, we wanted to measure, we had the KPI, being able to maintain the action for 90 minutes. A lot of teams use what they call high intensity distance for this. This means the speed an athlete runs above a certain threshold. So for example, 20 kilometers per hour. Every time he comes above it, we count the number of meters. But my personal frustration with this way of measuring is always, so if I run 19.8, then it's not counted. But if I run 30 kilometers per hour, it's also not valued extra. So what we did is, we took what they call a trim model, which values, extra values, the time spent in each zone. So the higher you come up into the zones, the higher the effort is valued. Which is awesome, or much better than what you have with high intensity distance, but still not so honest. Because, say this is heart rate, and my zone barrier is at 180. So if I'm at 179, the value is multiplied by 16. If I'm 180, the value is multiplied by 32. Doesn't sound like a really honest way to value the load of a player. So what we did is we developed a continuous zone weight where we try to value how high is the player in the specific zone, what's the difference in the weight, and we apply that to a single load number. Here you can see how that looks. So every data point is multiplied by how high the player is in the specific zone. Another example, another player. So we compared him over the 4 blocks again, and you can see that he's pretty consistent in maintaining his load. But we also compare players against each other, because we have around 30 players. 3 of them play on the same position, and we have to choose one. So a functionality that we use a lot is what we call an overlay, where we display the data, which is synchronized for every player, and we display the data against each other. So the green barrier is player 1 and the blue is player 2. What you can see, this was the same player as in the last slide, is that in the last 2 parts, his load is a lot lower, which means not fit enough compared to the other player. Okay, explosive actions. So we wanted to make the action more explosive. Easy to measure, we just record what's the highest value in a certain time frame. Again, use it over the 4 blocks, and you will see a big difference in the peak explosivity of certain players. Of course, this is also a little bit part of the human body. So there are players which are much more explosive capable, and you have players who are much more endurance capable. And you always have to figure out an optimal balance in your team. But systems like this help you identify which type of player you have in your squad. Okay, last one. Maintaining explosive actions. So we want him to maintain those actions over time. One funny thing is that a lot of teams use average values for that. And I always had a hard time explaining them why not to do it until we found this fantastic example. This was a warm-up drill where a player was just jogging around the field. But if you look at this average power value, 58%. And then we had a drill where he had to put in, 7 sprints. Which we all know, if you try it at home, if you have to do 7 sprints, that will take a lot more energy and you will feel it more in your legs than just having a graduate walk or run around the field. So we were looking for a submetric which could display that properly. And we chose the power intensity for that. Power intensity is the load value, which I just explained, with the continuous zone weight divided by the time. And again, if you compare that, yeah, you can see big differences between players. Now the big question, how are we going to improve this? So we have a system which can measure it, but now we need the philosophy, the model, to tell us how to improve it. Okay, so they say if you want to train a player to make more actions, what you should train is extensive intervals, and he translates that in 3 against 3 and 4 against 4. Short spaces, not many players in there, so you will force the player to make a lot of actions. But extensive interval also means short, so 2 minutes, series of 5, and then, duration of 2 minutes, 5 series, 5 intervals in 2 series. That means every time 2 minutes, 2 minutes rest. 2 minutes active, 2 minutes rest. Then 1 long break and repeat the same. If we compare that over time, So we have the same, every 6 weeks, the same drills come back. We have a really objective way to compare what's the progression of the player. Here you can see September and November that the number of high intensity events during the same game are increasing. There's a big increase. And even in November, the coach decided to play 2 extra intervals, which they weren't capable of in the phase before. Same for maintaining more actions. So we have this web system, and you immediately can visualize that there's a big difference between the players. And then the last bit. The interesting question then is, how can you track the progression of the athlete over time? One of the models we're working with now is where we say we have a really extensive training, a really heavy training, which we set to 100% at a certain month. And from that moment, we calculate to percentages back the values over time. And we do it in 2 ways. One is we have a measure where we say, this is the border for the whole team. This is a limit, and we want to see up against that limit, how is the player progressing. The second model is we want to plot the player against himself. So did the player improve over time? But as you can see, the team is progressing over time, which might be much steeper than the performance of the actual player. And that all has a big decision in if a player can stay with the team, keep up with the pace that the team is working on or not. In this case, this is an example of a player who was going really well, got injured, got back to the second team, tried to get back, but lost it over time. After the winter break, he dropped off and in the end got sold to another club. Another example of a player is where you can see that you can have performance increasements for 20 to 30% by training him in a structured way. Okay, that's the example I wanted to provide to you guys today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Max. Let's see what kind of questions we have. Okay, so the first question is, what are your plans for opening data to analysis by third-party companies? Yeah, so we've been looking at open APIs in terms of our devices and the data being available for other people to look at. We probably start first with our consumer devices and then eventually get to the elite. So that's in our thought process, and hopefully in the near future we should be able to have that. The next question is, how does Adidas miCoach compare to other technologies commercially available? Is anything even close? So yeah, so there are a lot of different technologies out there. So there have been heart rate monitoring technologies out there for a number of years in a lot of different forms. There has been GPS technology available out there in a lot of different forms. There has been inertial sensors and accelerometer technologies available out there also in a lot of different forms. So there is a whole bunch of different technologies that are out there. What is different and unique about the Adidas miCoach Elite, I'm assuming this is specific to the miCoach Elite technology, is we have the ability of bringing all of those together, right, and having it in a very simple, easy to use form factor. So for example, this smart shirt, Elite shirt, which has the sensors built into a shirt that is typically worn by athletes and for sports enthusiasts, right? As opposed to creating a strap or something else that people are not used to and will not wear, right? So that's the important and unique differentiator. And then more importantly, the other differentiator is about the ability to not only monitor what the player is doing, but also what is happening to the player, right? And so different pieces of technologies do that differently. The ability to bring it all together, and particularly, I mean, some of the examples that Max gave in terms of analyzing that data so that it becomes very relevant, very actionable, and independent of the sport, independent of the training methodology that you use, apply this as a tool for the training methodology that's most applicable to you. So we want to make sure that this is a tool for the trainers and the coaches to use with the methodology that they are most signed up for or comfortable with. So that is, I think, some of the key uniqueness. And then particularly also for the consumer part of wearable tech, there are obviously a lot of different wearable tech devices also out there, right? And here what Adidas does differently is bring our expertise in the sports domain and bring that out. So as opposed to like all day wear or wellness or something like that, we are very sports specific, right? And that is a heritage, and that is the expertise that we have, and that is the kind of insights that we bring into the data that you collect from any consumer devices. And I welcome again for all of you to stop by at our tech, in the tech room and check out some of these devices. Sorry, Kate. So the next question was, are there limitations on what data coaches have access to during games, or is the system entirely open? So in terms of the data for that particular team and the coach, right? So there are two ways for the coach to have that. One is the analyzed data. So it's not the raw data, but the information that is very relevant. And then after that, if the coach wants to look at very detailed or granular data, that is also available for them to see. I don't know if Max has to add to the comment.
I think another, is my microphone on? Yeah. I think another one is currently in soccer, for example, there's a rule of the FIFA not allowing to wear any device which transmits. So that prohibits us currently from wearing or being able to wear the device in game. So that's a big limitation, and we hope that the FIFA will overcome that really soon. For MLS, I believe there's already an exception made where they are allowed to wear this in-game.
Right, so particularly the use of the technology in-game depends a lot on the sport, the league, and the contracts that are there. So the technology is being very openly used in training, and when it gets to game, there are different leagues, so like for example, MLS is a little bit further out. They are considering the ability to use that in games. They have been using this technology in training all of last year, all the 19 teams. So this is probably one of the first league-wide system that is being operational. And then other sports have more openness to using that. So that is something that is really dictated or controlled by the individual sport, league, or team or the athlete. Okay. The next question is, how does this technology apply to goalies? It doesn't seem like it would be as useful for them.
It does. So we have a very specific goalie trainer who looks a lot in the distance that players should keep to their goalie. For example, if we're in attack, we want our goalie to close the gap behind the last defender, so that if any ball that might come over it, the goalie must be able to respond to that and kick the ball out. So that means that it's really important for us to have that distance and to know how even the goalie is moving around the field. Second is, a goalie is also a player who doesn't have to have that many actions, but in phases he has high repetitions of it. And three is the stress. So what we measure is, if you look at the heart rate profile for a goalie, you will see that the moment the game starts, his heart rate goes up by about 15 to 20 beats, which is pure mental, which is pure focus. And if that's something we can measure, we can help him with it and we can improve him in it.
Yeah, and particularly about goalies, I mean, we used to have another slide in there which was looking at power and heart rate loads, which we did not include in this one. And what was very interesting for me to look at that is, like, if you look at the whole team, and if you look at just heart rate, actually the goalkeeper's heart rate and the heart rate load is pretty high up. So you would expect them to do a lot of work. If you look at the power that they put out, that's actually pretty low, because in terms of the total amount of movement, right? But if you look at the two together, that gives you good understanding in terms of like what the goalie is doing and what's happening to their heart rate load, to themselves, as well as the work that they do outside. Let's see, the next question is, does your power measurement take direction of motion into account? velocity rather than speed. Can I take that, Max?
Yeah. So what we have is a 3-axis accelerometer, which takes the change of direction in basically any movement into account. That's the easiest answer.
And then the last question that we have is, what warnings are sent to the athlete to prevent injury? So I'll let Max talk a little bit more about that, but particularly in the system, the way the system is designed, you can put alerts and you could put targets. So for each and every individual athlete, for example, you want them to have a certain heart rate load for that particular training period, you can set a target and you know when the target is reached. On the other hand, if you want the athlete to go no more than 95% of the maximum heart rate, you can set that number, right? And whenever that athlete reaches 95%, there's an alert out there. In addition to that, during the game or during the training, whenever any particular activity happens, you as a coach or the trainer can make a note of that in the system so that you can go back and take a look at, like, this is what happened and what happened as a result of that to what the player was doing and what happened to the player.
Yeah, an amazing example of that is, I don't know if you guys are familiar in soccer, but if you know Arjen Robben, who is a fantastic Dutch striker, and he is the guy, they call him the man of glass, because he's always getting injured. And why is he getting injured? Because he's so explosive that if he's out on the pitch with the rest of the team, he's just putting in twice the amount of work in the same time. So what we actually did is we set targets for him, and if he reaches the target that the normal player would reach over a whole session, it is fairly good possible that he will reach it half the session. And if the target fires up, we just send him in. And that has proven at Bayern Munich to be a fantastic way to keep him fit. And currently, I don't know if you have seen him play, but he's fitter than ever. And it's a really good way to keep track of him.
Okay, so we got some more questions from the audience. And the next one is, how valuable are these metrics for a competitive standpoint? Are these the kind of things that would be valuable for an opponent to get a hold of? So the second part actually came up in a panel session that I was having with Andrew Luck and Matt. And Matt was saying, like, I mean, we spend a lot of time, not so much on ourselves, but understand what the opponent is doing, right? So his perspective was, I think, rather than me wearing the shirt, can I have the opponent wear the shirt and I get all of the data? And I said, tough luck. It's probably going to take a while before you get there. So, but that potentially is a useful tool.
But to me, that sounds really strange. An athlete saying, I want data of my opponent, but I don't care about my own data. To me, when I heard that, and when I heard him say, I have to wear that strap, and I have to wear that watch to measure my heart rate, I thought, Jesus, guys, they are miles and miles behind. We use this system every day to collect the data. Players come to us and return their pods, and they ask, give me my data. I want to know, did I do better than yesterday? The coach was angry at me that I didn't train hard enough. I want to see my values. Help me. And I think that is the way that the new generation of players will work. It's not that coach anymore that has to say to them, directive from above, you have to do this and that. It will be the player saying, I want to improve. Help me, fitness coach. I see that my peak values are not high enough. I want to train that extra. That's the way I think it will progress.
Okay, so we have a whole bunch of questions. We'll see how many we can get through this time we have. So the next one is, can anyone buy a miCoach Elite product? How much does it cost? So particularly the miCoach Elite product, so it's not just one shirt or one player cell. It comes as a full system consisting of X number of shirts, player cells, a base station, iPads, the whole web experience. And right now, what Adidas is doing is, like, we're going and having the systems available for initially the Adidas sponsored clubs. Initially, it's meant for soccer, for training. So for example, the whole MLS league now has it for a year. All the Adidas teams who are qualifying for the World Cup are going to have that system. And as we continue to meet the needs of the elite teams that Adidas has sponsored, we will continue to expand the distribution of that system. In terms of, but what is available openly for individuals to buy, is the consumer version of the miCoach Elite system. So what we've been able to do is like take the knowledge and the learnings that we get from a sports expertise domain that we have and the elite athlete and bring that kind of an experience for consumer devices. And that is what's available for consumers to have individually. But if this question came from some elite team or some teams who would rather have that, maybe we can have a conversation on the sides in terms of what is the need and how can we bring those systems to other elite teams faster than what we have planned for.
I also work for the Dutch national team, which is a Nike team, and I went to Keza and I said, give me a system, come on. Well, he didn't want to sell it to me, so.
Okay, so the next question is this the device used by the Seattle Sounders in MLS? Yes, that is correct. So all the 19 MLS teams have this miCoach Elite Team system for the last year, so they've used that along through the whole season. And now they are getting into the next season, and then they have plans depending upon how their discussions progress in terms of data sharing and data rights to be able to use that in game as well. Should doctors monitor heart rate data in real time as a player safety check? So the tool allows you to look at the heart rate of the individuals. Now, the coach or the trainer or anybody that the coach or the trainer wants to have a look at the data has access to that data. And then it is up to each individual team and the trainer and the coach in terms of what they want to do with the information on that one.
I think though that what that doctor, if you talk about arrhythmias or stuff like that, what you need then is not the basic heart rate signal, but what you need is a 3 points, at least 3 points ECG signal, which is currently not what we have.
The next one is, this would be so helpful during the games. We agree. I believe a couple of players had heart attacks recently, last 2 or 3 years, during official soccer. Now, definitely we agree that it has a lot of value in game as well, but as Max said, the current FIFA regulations do not allow use of this technology, which has bi-directional communication, to be used in game. And hopefully, I mean, we obviously have a perspective and we've got a great relationship with FIFA, and we want to educate and give more information so that eventually that becomes part of the game.
And I think even then, with that ECG, there's some method in where we could help in detecting those pretty preliminary.
Okay, so the next one is, for wearable tech, how valuable are these metrics from a competitive standpoint? Are these the kind of things that would be valuable? Okay, I think I went through this question, right? Okay, sorry about that.
I can comment on a couple of things. I mean, so one of the first things I do if I get a system like this is I want to see a validation. And even more specific, I want to personally do a validation. So I did a couple, and the stuff we're really, really proud of is, one, the mechanical power has so the gravity removal has an accuracy up to 1 degree. That is something no other competitor has. The accuracy of speed, which we merge with GPS, has an accuracy we haven't seen, and I tested all those systems. We haven't seen that from any competitor. So, and the third one, acceleration, nobody dares to talk about, especially on a competitor level. I think we are really, really close to having a gold standard there. So, from my point of view as a user, I am very proud of the system that we currently have, and we know we want to build it further and enhance it, but that is where we are now.
Yeah, an important thing to point out is, like, from our perspective, this is a platform technology. So we've used the best technology that's available today, but as more and more technology become available, we want to continue to enhance the system in terms of the sensors that it has for capturing what the player does, but also capturing what happens to the player and the analytics that follow behind that. Next one is, do you believe FIFA will allow the use of this device during official soccer matches? So we just talked about that. I personally believe FIFA will. When is the big question? So I don't know if you have any perspective.
Mr. Blotter has to go away very soon.
Not coming from me, coming from Okay, so it's Q from Max. How do managers vary use of KPIs while keeping in mind differences in player positioning, role in team?
That's a big one. Let me be honest about 90% of the managers. And that is, if they have a difficult decision, they will, in general, they will never look at the system or ask anything about the system until they have to make a very difficult decision. And then they will say, can you give me something that player Y shouldn't be in the team? And then all of a sudden they want some data to prove that, and they go to the player and say, hey, I'm sorry, I wanted you in, but the data says that's not okay. That is how a lot of teams work. In comparison to position of the players, in the system we currently support creating positional groups, and that means that you're able to set certain thresholds or compare certain players within a group or within a position as you want to compare them. So that's the way we handle that.
Okay, next one. Can coaches use wearable tech in-game for coaching, or is it used for analysis later? So it is a real-time system, right? But you can also use the system where you do not want to do the real-time part. You just capture all the data in the pod, right? And after the fact, then you can plug that into the base station that you saw on the video, and that's when all the data gets sucked up, and then it gets also to the web, and you can do the analysis. So that is a possibility. I think we've covered how does, because we've done that, how does these miCoach compare? Are more and more coming as it goes along? Okay. I somehow lost that screen, but I think we might have gotten most of the questions. I don't know if you can let me know. Okay.
Yeah, just close it up, invite them. I think you're all invited to room 310, which is the tech room that Keza talked about. We have a fantastic setup. We have some proof of concept systems with us. We have some consumer line with us. I'm myself wearing the shirt now. I wanted to see my heart rate, so if you want to see more of that, come and see me in room 310, and we'll talk more about the...
He really wanted to do the live demo right here on the stage, right? Okay. I was being a little bit conservative about it. I said, like, but yeah, we welcome you to come and stop by in 310, the tech room, particularly for yourself if you're interested in any of the consumer miCoach devices, as well as the miCoach team, elite team system that we talked about.
Especially if you're in this market, I mean, the guys who are up there have more knowledge than the rest of the soccer world together. So, I mean, speak to Roger, speak to Darcy,
Meg,
speak to Steve and Meg.
Meg, Steve,
I mean,
Bryce, so
those are the high-end guys
involved in developing that. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.